Hey, coaches, before we get going today, I just wanted to thank you for all you've been doing to support this podcast. And we have an incredible lineup coming up here. We have just about every major college conference represented. We have a ton of FBS coaches, Division II coaches, Division III coaches, some great high school football coaches coming on the podcast to share with you and help you grow professionally during this time. I really appreciate all of you asking your questions on Twitter. Please follow me at Coach K. Grabowski for our daily updates on our guests and your opportunity to ask questions. We will read them on the show and attribute those to you. So please contribute to the show as much as you can. I'm excited to be joined on the podcast today by offensive line coach. He's a legend to a lot of people here who are in the offensive line world and who study the offensive line. Coach Dorazio, I appreciate you taking some time here to join us on the podcast.
Well, Keith, it's our high honor, and it's a great privilege to be with you this afternoon, and I'm deeply appreciative and humbled that, as you would ask us to be a part of this podcast, and we're certainly glad to share.
Absolutely. And I've got to give credit here to Angus Reed, who's been on the podcast with us before, and Angus reached out to me with this idea, and it took me like 2 seconds to say, absolutely, yes, let's do it. So what we did is we got together a list of questions, and I did reach out to some offensive line coaches I know from the college level. We have a high school coach in here too. All of them have been on this podcast before, so they were excited to be able to ask you these questions. So we'll start with Cody Kennedy and some of the questions he had. He's the offensive line coach at Tulane, and his first question was just asking, what are your 3 favorite run concepts?
Well, I'd say this. We've always had a great belief in the zone system blocking. We've always felt that zoning gives you an uphill push. The overriding point in zone blocking is just there's a lack of penetration, which means you're going to have a great chance of having good plays. So our approach has always been to run the zone systems, and we've featured wide zone system. We've featured the tight zone system, the rollback tight zone type. And then finally, the third system would be that tie in with zone systems would be, the wham type plays, where you can utilize zone concepts on the front side and still create a division in the defense where you can cut a defense in half. Now, these wham systems, they have short shelf lives. They don't stick there for a period of time. You've got to put them in and then take them out and put them back in. So those would be the 3, Keith.
So Coach, I have to ask you, with the zone over the course of your career, what techniques did you really evolve to behind that? Because I know things have certainly changed a lot from when I first learned it and started using it. For me, it was somewhere around 2004 maybe, and even in that time frame to some of the things that we picked up from the Cool Clinic and those types of things, we had evolved as well. So for you, what was the evolution of the technique behind the zone blocking?
Well, I think this. I think that both zones feature different landmarks, tracks off the ball. So those have been pretty consistent throughout the course of the years. We have always tried to highlight combinations. The combinations, how we decide on combinations are the inside shade defenders. If the guard's covered, then the inside combination would be the center and guard, and the tackle's a independent contractor unless he's called in with the tight end on the call side. And then your backsides, whether it's a center guard backside combination or backside guard backside tackle combination, would be depending again on the inside shade defender. And again, each combination is unique to which zone system you're utilizing. Probably the biggest technique that we have in the wide zone systems that we've utilized over the years is the play side tackle on the wide zone. That's a very important technique because he is the one that really telegraphs for the back where to run, whether we're going to run out or we're going to run in. And we have utilized a couple of techniques. We've utilized a club technique where we club the end out to tell the back where to run, and then we've also used a catch hand reach on that technique where he has a middle of the outside number target, and he uses his backside hand, not so much a club, but just a catch hand. and then marshal the defender either in or out to tell the back where to go. So those would be the thoughts I have regarding, the question.
So Coach Kennedy also was interested in drills, and his question was, what are 3 drills you can't go through a week without doing?
Well, we've over the years, we've had a great belief in cycling drills throughout the course of a season to accomplish, the same things. And the purpose of drills are, number one, to organize yourself before contact, and then number 2, to organize yourself after contact. And especially in today's world, where there's you're minimizing contact in practice because of the issues involved in the game. So, but I would say this: I would say the 3 things that we're going to do every week in and week out are, number 1, we're going to do the Crowther, part of the Crowther progression, which gives you great, tremendous focused energy on blow delivery, balance and body control, and then finish on it. The second one would be emulating a drill in terms of getting the linemen to be grounded when they deliver blow deliveries. Being grounded, meaning the foot is underneath the hip, underneath the shoulder of the foot of the shoulder that they're going to block with. Utilizing a grounded drill technique. Simple as align an offensive lineman up in a 2-point stance, put a small board in front of his grounded foot, and tell him to step over the board and get grounded in the ground, his whole foot in the ground, and then striking on that first step, and then finishing off. Just the emphasis is on being grounded when you strike. So that would be the second one. And the third one, I think, would be related to pass protection, Keith, where there's an old drill called mirror dodge. The late great Dan Radakovich put emphasis on this in his career, and we learned it from Dan. And we've used it with pulls. We put pulls, wooden pulls on the back of our shoulders and wrap our arms back and behind there, and we just get the defender or the demonstrator to move in between, say, a set of cones, and he tries to dodge, and we try to mirror his rush. And you're utilizing footwork and protection, and you're utilizing, avoiding leaning. We put the pull on the back of the shoulders there to prevent leaning in foot movement type stuff. So I would think those 3 things.
Coach, we've had guys on who've made that transition from 11-man football to 12-man football before. Jonathan Heimbach was one of them. He's back now coaching in the XFL, but you coached for a long time in the United States in college football, and then you made the jump to the Canadian Football League. For you, what was the biggest transition in making that jump and being able to coach offensive line?
Well, who helped me the most with that? This is like 22, 23 years ago. I knew I was going to go to the CFL. I knew we had accepted the job, and we put a phone call into Rod Rust, the late great Rod Rust. This is like in 1997, and he had coached in the CFL, and at the time he was with the Atlanta Falcons. And I called Coach up one day, and I told him I was going up there, and I asked him what the issues were, and he shared with me this, and I think it holds true. It's the same game as the American game. It's just a different set of problems, and where it relates to the offensive line most would be what I've come to describe what I call the yard of grace. The yard of grace is the distance between the football and where the defender is, and it's different from down south. The forward tip of the football to where their down hands are, the down linemen are, that's 36 inches. They can't really get really close to the ball because of the rules. So I would think that's probably the biggest thing that you got to adjust to. It's the same game as far as blow delivery and striking and hitting, but I think the yard of grace, it's good and bad. It's good in a way. It affords you, Keith, it affords you some momentum and velocity that's where you can get a running start. You have a little bit more two-step contact up here in Canada than you do down south when you're blocking a down lineman in front of you. But at the same time, we've learned that experienced defenders, they know how to negotiate that yard of grace. they can see you coming. Whereas down south, that's not so much the case. So we have had, one of the adjustments we've had to make is what we call a pin step. We're going to, normally if a defender's lined up on our outside shoulder and we're going to go run block on him, normally you would step near foot, near shoulder and go block him. But because that yard is with some distance here, we at times will take a step with our inside foot first, vertical, decrease the space and the time in between us and him so he can't cross face you as easily when they see you coming. And then I would think the other thing would be on short yardage and goal line. It makes the quarterback sneak more appealing up here. It's you have distance and they're not as tight to the ball, so it makes that play a little better. And then finally, I think this from a strategy point of view, we have a loss of down up here also. We don't have 4 downs. So with a loss of down, the productivity on first down is a real high priority, Keith, in the running game, which makes you say this: you want +4 runs on first down. You want to put defenses in 2nd and 6 or less, because we found that when it's 2nd and 7, kind of like 3rd and 7 down south, the defense has great advantages, and you don't have that extra down to play with, and that would be the other thing that's caused some transition with, or you're thinking in game planning, you're thinking in strategy.
Yeah, definitely. Interesting. Well, Coach, you definitely have a storied career here, and a couple things looking back. For those of you out there who know Coach and have seen Coach, he does not look like your traditional offensive line coach, because he played running back in college. So you're now coaching offensive line at a high level. Did you have any struggles, or how did you benefit, I guess, from having been a running back and then going to coaching the offensive line?
I'd say this, Keith. I think no matter what position you coach, in football, it's very important that you become knowledgeable and skilled in the game, because our job is to give our players information and give them answers to the test on game day. And me being a running back and then having to coach the offensive line, I think no matter if I would have had to coach the DBs or coach the linebackers, I think I would approach it the same way. And I think it goes back to how you learn and what do you do to research football and what we've done. And I can just share this with you, that we've learned the game, and specifically the offensive line end of it. We've learned it, I would say, probably 3 ways over the years. We've learned we've had mentors who have, I would say this, Keith, totally challenged and stimulated how we do it. Mentors, guys who have been a part of our in learning the game, Howard Mudd and Alex Gibbs and Jim McNally, those guys have been instrumental in giving us thoughts on how to do it. But I think most importantly, when you're learning from mentors like we have, and me being a running back in college and having to go coach linemen, I think it's important that whatever you get from a mentor, you got to put it in your own words. You've got to do it your way, but you got to really dig into it and put it the way you want it from the information they give you. So that would be one suggestion in terms of how we've kind of grown into this business. The second one we've learned from our own players, and this takes time over the course of years. But let me share this with you. You cannot put a price tag on the insights of the players that they give you. Yes, you give them instruction, but they're the ones going out and doing it. And lots of times when they come off the field and you get their input or you get into the film room with them and you're talking about how it happened out there, some of the things they tell you are awesome. And we have learned that way. And finally, we've learned the hard way. Okay, we've certainly gotten our tails kicked, our fannies kicked pretty good sometimes, and that has a way of growing you in the offensive line world. And And like I say, yeah, we played running back, but at the same time, your job as a coach is, no matter what you coach, you better know your business. You better know why you're telling guys certain stuff. And I certainly think that the mentors would learn from the players, and then getting butt kicked. I think those are the biggest things in our transition to becoming a football coach.
Yeah, and I'd like to encourage, especially our young coaches out there, that mentor side of coaching. I think I've been worried a little bit that that's disappearing in some ways, that guys move maybe too quickly from job to job sometimes, or rely on what they feel is all this online knowledge and resources. And I think all those things are good, but there's something to be said of being able to lean on and learn from a guy who's been there before.
No question. And how we got started was we became graduate assistants at Kent State. Coach Don James, I played for there, and became a graduate assistant for him there. He put me with the offensive line, and my mentor there was Dick Sesniak. Dick took me under his wing and challenged me, and I began learning from him. And I was a young GA at the time, and I worked with the tight ends, I worked with the offensive line, and I think as a young coach, one of the best things to do is get with somebody that's had the experience, has had success. That's a real key point. Starting with somebody that knows the game and can begin to share with you, and then it's like everything else. You grow, and the more you meet guys, and the more you dig in, the better you become, and you get. And finally, after being around it enough, you can develop your own system and your own beliefs for what you believe. But getting started with somebody like Coach Sesniak was, and Coach James, boy, how fortunate and how blessed I was to those two men right there helped me.
Yeah, some great names in your past, Coach, and one of those was a teammate of yours, Nick Saban. And one of Coach Kennedy's last questions was if you could share a teammate story of being a teammate with Nick.
Nick was a great captain. He was an outstanding teammate. Keith, a fierce competitor, extremely focused. He was a very serious guy, but humble. His intent every day was, I would say this, Keith, his intent every day was to be the best. His focus, as I said, was great. He was a tough guy, tough player. He could hit you. And I'd say this, there's no secret why he's become a legendary coach. That's just the way, that's his nature. His nature was in that order. And he was a heck of a football player. He made some great plays for us at Kent. He was a DB and strong safety, and I can remember a couple of plays he made. We were on the goal line, and we were up, I think, 13-7 against Buffalo, and they had the ball on our 3-yard line. It was 4th and goal, and all that stood between the back and the flat and the goal line was Nick. And Keith, he got up under his pads, stood him straight up. He's driving his legs and brought him down, but the echo of his pads cracking, that you could hear. It just filled the stadium. He just stopped the guy dead in his tracks, and for a no gain, that saved the game. And that was in that game right there was a momentum changer. And then there was another time, and I think this really would put Kent State on the map at that time. You got to know that Kent State for many years was not a good football program, struggled. And at the time, Nick was playing and we were playing. Coach James was trying to get over the hump and get the program, highly thought of. And at the time, we weren't. But we were playing Bowling Green. And Bowling Green was in the upper echelon of the Mid-American Conference. And one of the things we needed to do was play well against Bowling Green, but to beat Bowling Green, which hadn't been done for a long time at Kent. Well, Nick had a big part in beating that Bowling Green team on this Saturday afternoon. He made a play in the fourth quarter that I really believe it put Kent on the map. We were up, I would say, I think it was 14-10, and they ran like a wing back counter, Keith. that broke free. And the same thing, the only defender between the ball carrier and the end zone, who do you think it was? It was Nick. And the guy put a move on Nick. He wasn't fooled at all. He wasn't fooled at all. And he hit him with such an impact that he forced a fumble, recovered it on his own to everyone's amazement. And I think it's probably going to go down as one of the greatest defensive plays in Kent State history. It turned the program around, and we won the game. And I think it was a defining moment for Kent State football at that time, and got us into a bowl game for the I think second time in the history of the league. So yeah, I mean it's just here's the amazing thing about Nick. The amazing thing about him is for his life's work, all he wanted to do was be a car dealer, and and Coach James saw something in him and convinced him to be a graduate assistant and get in coaching. And that's how it all got started. He was on his way. He'd gotten married in college before he graduated, and they were all set to move back home, and he was going to get into that, and the rest is history. It just shows you the quality of guy that he's becoming as being a coach and all the things he's done in our profession.
Well, definitely the competitiveness that you shared just in those stories comes through. I mean, I could visualize exactly what that looked like and hear those sounds of those pads as you described it. So it's good to hear a story of where all of that started for Coach Saban. Coach, our next set of questions is from Brian White. He's the offensive line coach at FCS Hampton. And as I said before, all these guys are really appreciative to be able to ask you these questions. And Coach started by saying that you're a legend. So he wanted you to know that, of course. And he said he knows you're a big double under guy. He wanted to hear about the importance of that striking system, especially opposed to a flat back fit on a drive block.
I would think this. I think this. Whether you double under, there's places for that. Or whether you double-fisted uppercut, flat back, however you want to call it, whether you do either, they're both good. There's reasons to do both. I think you still must have two things. You've got to have proper leverage, and you've got to have proper body alignment. And that's what blocking's all about. And proper leverage is hitting someone low enough to create a lifting sensation, but yet, Keith, close enough to segment the defender's upper body strength from power in his hips and legs. That's leverage. And you've got to obtain that leverage in either blow delivery. And then whether you double under or you double fist uppercut with a flat back, you've got to have good body alignment. And I think there's 5 body parts that have the most effect on every block. And the first body part is your head. I think your head provides direction. Where your head goes, your eyes tell you where your head goes, but where your head goes, your body follows. Second body part are whether it's your hands or even shoulder blow deliveries. They've got to be in line. The third body part is your back, and your back is a ramrod, is what your back does. Your shoulders or your hands or your arms or your blocking surface. Your head provides direction. Your back is a ramrod. Your hips and your legs, they're your power sources. And finally, your feet. Your feet provide movement. But the important body alignment is this, Keith. All those 5 body parts, whether you double under or whether you 3-prong double fist uppercut with a flat back, all those body parts better be on a line of force through the cylinder of the defender. And the feet have got to be underneath. You've got to be grounded, but they've got to be in the same body alignment, and utilizing the leverage I described earlier. When you've got the leverage and you've got body alignment, all body parts in line through the cylinder of the defender, now you can marshal your strength through that cylinder, and you're going to have enough mustard to knock anything back. Keith, bottom line, you've got to create force in every block. And force is created through these body parts, but I was doing a clinic a few years ago, and I said, you need force in every block. So for fun, I looked up the definition of what force is in the Webster's dictionary. And here's an interesting definition from Webster. It's driving and propelling against resistance. Well, what's the resistance, Keith? The resistance is the ground, okay? Not so much the defender, the ground. So what do you drive and propel against? Your feet do that. And that's why I said earlier, if you want movement, okay, your feet provide the movement. And they've got to drive and they've got to propel against the resistance, which is the ground, and you're going to get something going. So long story short, I don't think it matters if you're double under. And we use both, by the way. There's times where we double under. There's times when we're going to be flat backed and go with it.
What dictates which technique you're going to use?
I think when you're a little slower off the ball because defenses are stunning and moving, the double under is a good way to go. We get into some wide zone systems where we're really running off the ball, and our two-man combinations could pretty much handle stunts and movements, and we would be more flat back oriented. But if we're getting a lot of stunning and we don't want to be running off the ball and getting into the yard of grace real fast, and we want to just kind of slow it down, then your double under, I think, has an effect.
Coach, our next questions come from Matt Jones. A lot of our listeners know him from his popular social media presence with Lineman Lunch. He's the offensive line coach at FCS Tennessee Martin, and he was interested in learning what your off-season development plan looks like.
Okay. Over the years, we have put emphasis in, I would say this. Now, the first thing we do in an off-season program, and we try to do it every day, is we develop grip strength. Grip strength. There's multiple grip drills that you can do to strengthening grips. I know in today's world you got weight coaches who do that. I don't rely on the weight coach. I personally work on that in the off-season with my guys. Okay. A lot of ways to do it. Squeezing newspapers, squeezing balls, dipping hands in sand, in a bucket of sand. Many ways, but I think that's the first area. The second thing I would say in the off season, it's a great time to develop finish techniques, finish emphasis, how to finish blocks in one-on-one blocking or in protections. Just the little techniques of finishing. Is a great time to do that, where it's a slowed down emphasis. You can teach, spend time on the little things in finished blocks, where sometimes when you get in the heat of the season, you haven't got that time, and put great emphasis on it. The third area would be below delivery, but I think more importantly, utilizing a full Crowther progression, teaching, going through all the phases of the progression, where you've got time in the off season to do that with. That would be one. Another area would be, and maybe strength coaches do this, but I've always done this as a line coach with my guys, plyos, and I learned this many years ago. You make a plyo that's 36 inches off the ground, okay, and you get your guys to 180 sets. Do a set of 10 and do a 180. 180 up and a 180 down, a 180 up and a 180 down. Try that one time. That is tough work. And what they do is you're developing your core, you're developing your hips and your legs in that, and I think that is a great idea, a great plan for your off-season offensive line work. In getting the pass protection, you remember the Tunch punch and the Tunch Ilkin spots right there. Well, we have taken a lot of his stuff, and we have a wall, and we wall punch and go through a lot of the Tunch stuff, and we do it also with movements. I think that's always been central in our off-season plans. Another one would be what we call big man syndrome. They say big men can't move in space. Well, we work on that hard, and a small little drill I like to do is have my guys run right at me as hard as they can, as fast as they can with their feet wide, and I move left or I move right, and I want them to adjust off of me and go hit something real quick. But it's moving in space fast, with balance, with body control. I think that's a good idea. And then in pass protection, I think one reason why guys lose one-on-one one reason why guys fail, I should say, in protection, if you study the tape, and we place great emphasis on this, is guys fail in protection because they lean or they catch. They lean or they catch. So in the off season, I like to take wooden poles. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but take wooden poles across their shoulder, okay, and put their arms wrapped around them and get them moving in movement skills, inside, outside, off the line of scrimmage to prevent the leaning. Or you can take a 45-pound plate and do the same thing. Do that to prevent the leaning, and then I think the other thing you should do in the off season is, I think this is central in pass protection, and that is teach focus, teach eye focus. Your eyes in pass protection, Keith, need to be big and intense. You need big grasshopper eyes when you're pass protecting, and in every protection there should be a target for eyes in every protection. The eyes should take you somewhere in a protection, whether it's a slide protection, whether it's a one-on-one block, I think you need to train eyes. You need to train eye focus. So that would be another area. And then there's two more areas in protection. One would be developing anchor ability to anchor, and finally setting, pass setting, whatever your philosophy is in setting. You can't do enough of that in the off-season stuff. So in answer to your off-season programs, those are the things that I really spend time on, and I think it's important in an off-season program that, as I said before, you need to cycle the stuff in the off-season. We don't try to repeat the same drill to accomplish the same function 2 days in a row. Keep things fresh for them with the off-season program, but still try to attack those areas. That would be probably, long and short, our thoughts there.
Coach, I've heard you say it a couple times now about cycling drills and not repeating drills. I would assume then you're not a big believer in the quote unquote everyday drill where you're doing the exact same drills 365 days a year.
Yeah. You're 100% right, Keith. We don't repeat the same thing. Every day is a new day. Every day is a new emphasis. And I think the other thing in drills that we picked up from Alex Gibbs years ago is we may do a 5-minute, 6-minute emphasis on a technique in a running game or a combination, whatever it is in running game, and we quickly get out of that and get right into a protection, okay, for however it takes, and it could be any element in protection. Say it's focus and on eye focus, and then we get right back to the run and right back to the pass. Because, as Alex said years ago, that's how you play the game. You're not over and over and over playing the game. Yeah. And their attention is awesome. It makes them more intense about what they're doing because you're always changing up on them, and they've got to change their focus, and their intensity really is in it, as we've found, as opposed to going a 35-minute block on just some kind of a run progression. That can be boring as well as challenging for them.
I love it, Coach. In 27 years, and I coached offensive line in a lot of those, I never thought of that way. But you're 100% correct. That's how the game is played. We don't say, okay, this series, it's just run. I mean, sometimes we do, but for the most part, we're right. Leaving that element of being able to mix things up, and I think phenomenal idea, not just for offensive linemen, probably for every position in looking at, kind of mimicking the game.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Absolutely.
Coach Steve Siassi is the offensive line coach at Bryant University, another FCS school. And his first question is about pass pro. He said, vertical set versus lateral or quick lateral set, which do you prefer and why?
Well, let's just say this. Keith, pass protection, it is not a passive activity. you can't be afraid to be aggressive. So with our inside guys, centers and guards, we have a general rule of thumb. We set short or we set shorter. And there's a reason for that. Because your biggest enemies that we learned years ago from Coach Mudd, your biggest enemies in protection are time and space. They're your biggest enemies. And our job is to get on them fast. And we want to make the first meaningful touch. So as a result, when we set short, we're setting right on the line of scrimmage parallel. And when we set shorter, we go jump them. We go get up into the line of scrimmage, meet them halfway, keeping the head out of there. Because, with the enemies being time and the enemies being space, time is what? Time is when the ball is snapped, the seconds start clicking. And as the longer they click, the more the defense gets the advantage. And that distance, that space distance, that distance between you and him, the more space is, the better it is for the defense. So your job as an offensive blocker in our minds is to, number one, disrupt the defender's space and disrupt the defender's timing. And we do that by setting shorter with close quarter blocking internally. Now, when it comes to tackles, it's a little different animal out there with wide rushers. And to set shorter, that doesn't make sense. You've got a different challenge on your hands because your defender is a little wider. Mm-hmm. So that causes us now you still have the same enemies. You got a bigger space enemy here, much bigger space enemy. You've still got space enemy, but he's a bigger enemy. And you got a bigger time enemy because they're further away from you. So as a result, the setting short and setting shorter just doesn't equate. So we do set off the ball here, whether we set to a spot for width, and that spot is mandated by his width, his angle, and his speed, or whether you set vertical, straight back as tackles. We do both. Okay? And then with the inside guys, there are times, Keith, to vertically set, or not vertically set, but to set off the ball. There are times for that. Okay? And times for that would be, you may get, like a guard might get a 4-eye technique, where he needs to set off the ball to deal with this guy. Mm-hmm. Not that you can't set shorter on a 4-eye, you can, but you can't live in that world. Okay? So there's reasons to set off the ball internally, but most of the time we're going to go after them, and conversely with tackles, yeah, there's times to go run jump those guys out there. There's times to set shorter up for those guys, but if you're living in a world of on third and long down south or second long here, you're not doing that. You just can't do that on that down distance. You got to pick your times when you can do that as a tackle. So long and short, that's pretty much our thoughts in pass protection from that standpoint.
Coach Dorazio also wanted to know about evaluation. He said, what are the characteristics you're looking for in college offensive linemen, both the measurables and the non-measurables?
Okay. One of the very first things that, Keith, I do is I find out the guy's injury history. Okay, because if they're hurt in college, they're going to be hurt in the pros. Okay? So that's the first thing. Mm-hmm. And then I want to find out, has he been in any kind of trouble? Is he ready to act like an adult yet? His character. Do we need to keep an eye on the guy? I'm trying to figure out what kind of makeup he is. Can he handle tough coaching? How does he respond to pressure? Does he love football? How important is it to him? Can he handle coming to football as a job every day for us? Those are non-measurables, so to speak, that I think, Keith, go a long way into detailing a guy's ability to be a performer. Okay, so in that area. And then you get into some some other areas, say length. We like guys with long arms. Okay. I think great length is 35 inches. Minimum would be 32 inches.
Sure.
32. It's 30 and 31 inch guys they're real tough. One thing we'll find out about length is the longer the arms, the slower the feet. The shorter the arms, you better have great feet. Okay. But we like guys. I tell you guys the kind of guys we like. We like guys who have been redshirted. We like those tall, skinny guys who are tough and smart. They want to play so bad to die. You know what I'm saying, Keith? They just want to play. And then I tell you what, if they've been redshirted in college, I kind of like to redshirt them with us. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'd be willing to wait for a guy to just develop his power and develop him. Basically, we're trying to find guys who can run. They're athletic. They have good recoverability skills and protection. They may not have that bulk and that strength. Don't like fat guys. Like guys who really don't know what their body's about yet, but you can teach them. You can coach them how to play the game. And in general, I'd say tackles, those guys, we like them to be athletic, like tall guys with length. I mentioned to you about the length of 35 inches. Athletically, we want them running. Inside guys, Keith, I'd say we don't worry so much about the height, weight stuff with them. They can be marginal. Their heights can be marginal, but they need to be leverage players. They need to be low waisted. They got to be able to have the leverage up underneath their bodies. They got one thing about inside guys, they must be football brilliant. They got to be smart, really smart, to play in our game. So I said I don't like fat guys. We don't generally have those guys. Don't like fat ankle guys either. If I see a guy with fat ankles, he better show me a lot on tape. Okay. And those are the characteristics we're looking for. I'd say hand size is big. Size 9 or more is a good hand. I measure shoe size. I like guys with size 15. I like guys with big feet. 15 or more, that's good. One thing I've done over the years is I measure 5-yard dash because that's how you play up front. 5 yard. I don't go by 10 yards. I mean, I do, but I'm looking for 5 yards and what they are. And I can share with you if a guy's 1.0 or less, he can cook. If he's got that kind of tempo and speed off the ball for 5 yards, and I just want him running, just like a sprint for 5 yards. That tells you a little bit about their explosion, their acceleration, and their feet. There's foot speed. So that's a big one for me personally. Not a lot of guys do that. Okay, and so those would be the ones I think are important.
So, Coach, you did start that question with the non-measurables. Is it safe to assume for you that is the starting point, that you want to know what the person is first before you go into all the physical attributes?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, because that goes a long way to him ever being a performer. It goes a long way. What's in that heart? Football is a game of inches. And the difference between winning and losing, week in and week out, it's not much now. You can put your thumb and put your forefinger almost next to each other. That's about the difference week in and week out. But I've always said this, 6 inches between your backbone and your breastplate, your heart and soul, that heart and that soul goes a long way to winning. And great hearts and great souls make great offensive linemen. And those are the kind of guys you want. You want to find those guys that when they get in the trenches and times get tough, they dig in and they like to work. Okay? They got work ethics. That's what you want right there.
So, Coach, my man Steve Siassi here, he must subscribe to your mixing it up between run and pass, so he does that a little bit here. His next question is on the run, and he wanted to know how you teach the zone double-team combos versus the gap double-team combos.
Okay, in the zone double team combos, I'll give you one for instance right now. Let's say that we're running a tight zone play and we got a front side 3 technique and an A-gap Mike, and that combination between a center guard on a linebacker, or it could be the tackle guard, the guard's uncovered, and the play side guard and tackle are double teaming the linebacker to the defensive end. The intent on a tight zone play for the lead blocker, who would be the covered lineman, his intent is to run 100 miles an hour right through the aiming point. And for our tight zone plays, if it's an A-gap landmark, if it's an A-gap landmark for the back, and it's a rollback zone, our landmark is the inside via the neck. If the inside zone play is the inside leg of the tackle, where it's a little wider, now our landmark for the guard is the outside via the neck. Okay, and that I'm talking about the lead blocker. Okay, for the uncovered lineman, or we call him a trail blocker. Okay, his intent is to win on the linebacker. And what we do with this trail blocker, he's going to take one step with his play side foot at the helmet of the down lineman, and he's going to key the near knee of the down lineman. And that foot's going to go on the ground, and he's going to stick his play side hand out and key that near knee. By the time his second step hits the ground, and that second step is his backside foot, and it's going to go straight. By the time that foot hits the ground, he's got to know, is that covered defender coming in, or is he going out, or is he hanging? And if it's hanging or widening, now he knows it's time to climb. And when he goes to block the linebacker, he'll keep his hand stuck out there. And if it hangs, he'll feed him onto the lead blocker. If it works away, he'll just bench press air. And when he goes to the linebacker, he's going to block the inside via the neck of the linebacker if it's tight zone. If it's an inside zone play, he's going to block the outside via the neck. Okay? That's the intent there of the tight zone play. If you took the cover defender and made say an inside technique on the lead blocker, so now it's the guard on a 1 technique, or some people call it a 2-eye. Okay, he becomes or a 4-eye technique on a tackle, with the guard uncovered there with a 4-eye technique on the tackle. So the lead blocker now in the tight zone play, his intent is to start a fight. His intent is to start a fight. The intent of the trail blocker is to consume and kill the down lineman. And between the two, the intent is to pound the down man. We want to pound that down man with 2 bodies. We want to put 600 pounds on 300 pounds. Okay, the intent, as I mentioned to you, the intent of the lead blocker here is to start a fight. And he does that this way. He'll step with his play side foot, and we're going to step with the outside foot first. Okay, it's going to go vertical, and the second step is going to get down, and he's going to get grounded. And he wants his inside foot to go to the groin of that 1 technique. The blow delivery on that, it could be a fisted uppercut, or it could be a lazy forearm shoulder blow. Okay, the trail blocker now, he's going to take an open step to open his hips. And one thing I share with you, every time you take a step like this, you want to get your hips framed up to what you want to hit. So he open steps to get his hips framed to what he wants to hit. His second step with his backside foot, he's going to pop it in the ground fast. But the most important step is the third step. He wants that thing to be in and up, and his aiming point is not the defender. His aiming point is the backside armpit of the lead blocker. That's his aiming point. Because we want to put 4 hands on that down lineman, and we want 4 eyes on the linebacker. We're going to push and mirror, push and mirror, push and mirror. 2 guys see the same thing. And neither one of them 2 are going to come off until the linebacker gets to their level. And once the linebacker gets to their level, one will deliver, the other one will overtake. One will feed, and the other one will get fed. If you're overtaken or if you're getting fed, now you've got to now pull the hand off and scrape paint with the other hand to get your hat all the way over in front. If you feed with elbow extension. And once you feed with elbow extension, you get your hat all the way over to the inside via the neck or the outside via the neck, depending on what kind of zone it is. So that would be a description of a tight zone against an inside technique defender. And now in the wider zone or the outside zone defender, if you have the same inside technique defender, okay, the intent for the lead blocker in the wide zone play or in the outside zone play, the aiming point for the running back on this is the butt of the tight end. And the running back is going to run off of the end. If the end is out, he'll be in. If the end is in, he'll be out. Regardless of what that back does, the intent for the lead blocker against an inside shade defender, okay, is to guarantee the landmark for the trail blocker and then go win on the linebacker second. That's his intent. The intent for the trail blocker is to win with his backside shoulder on the landmark. His intent is to take the landmark. Now, the landmark is the front side number of the down lineman or the front side shoulder of the down lineman. So the lead blocker now, he'll step with his outside foot vertical. His second step will get in the ground and he'll get grounded. And he will either use a fisted uppercut or a side arm bar, depending on the width of the down lineman. And he will guarantee the landmark, Keith, regardless of the alignment of the linebacker. That linebacker can be out there in the B gap somewhere or wider. He's still going to guarantee the landmark. And here's why. We want no penetration. We want no penetration. We want that front side, inside shade defender on the line. Mm-hmm. We want to win with that. We want to take the landmark with the trail blocker. Okay. Now the trail blocker now, he's going to come off at 90 degrees with the first step. 90 with hat speed. Hat speed means when you take that first step at 90 with that play side foot, that hat is getting outside that front side toe. He is going to bring that hat all the way in front of the toe. The second step is a 75, and he wants to take his helmet screws and drive them beyond the helmet screws of the down lineman. And now, once he gets to the landmark, he's going to work vertical, north and south with his back and win with his backside shoulder through. The lead blocker now, he will deliver that pretty quick now. Once he guarantees the landmark, he's off, and now he'll adjust his angle to block the play side number of the linebacker with what we call a catch hand reach technique on the linebacker. So that would be the wide zone play against the one technique. And then if you took the wide zone play against a three technique or an outside shade defender, and again, this would be the same thing for a tackle and a guard if the guard's uncovered. But the intent of the guard on the outside shade defender, they're working in combination. His intent is to run 100 miles an hour to the outside armpit of the down lineman. That's his intent, to run 100 miles an hour. He wants to come off the rock, okay? The intent of the trail blocker is to win on the linebacker, So the lead blocker, we're stepping play side foot. We are backside foot to crotch with the backside foot on the second step. The blow delivery is a fisted uppercut with the backside fist, and we want the front side hand on the outside half right there, and our hat's going right for that armpit. We want to take that three technique and knock his butt straight back, and he full well knows that trail blocker's coming with him. The trail blocker now is going to step 90 again. 90. He wants hat speed 90, and his eyes go right to the near knee of that down lineman. He is running diagonally. He wants to run with his face mask in front of the face mask of the down lineman. Face mask to face mask. 90 on the first step, 75 on the second step on a diagonal angle. On that first step, he's going to see if that near knee's coming at him. If that near knee's not coming at him, that second step, 75, is going, and then he's going to take one more step On that third step, if that 3 technique is hanging or if that 3 technique widens, he's going to force that 3 technique across the face of the covered lineman if he hangs. And he's doing that primarily, Keith, with Grail. He's not looking at that 3 technique anymore at that first step. His eyes are going to the linebacker because he don't want to get ear-holed by that linebacker. So on that third step, he's going to force the read. And when I say the read, the hanging 3 technique, who might be 2-gapping that guard across the guard's face. And now he's up on the linebacker to catch and reach the linebacker's play side number. Should that 3 technique work away, he'll still try to force the read, but he'll be doing it on air, and he's up on the linebacker. If the 3 technique spikes, he's going to see it right now, and now his job is to win on the linebacker. Or his job is to win with his backside shoulder on the spike. But you got to coach this into the guy. There could be a boomerang. That 3 technique, he could boomerang back outside. So if that 3 technique boomerangs back outside, he has got to keep fighting and scraping paint with his backside fist. We tell this to the lead blocker. If that 3 technique spikes, you do not follow it inside. You got to run to the linebacker because of the nature of the play, with the nature of where the running back's landmark is. So we don't slow that defender down at all. He keeps trucking for the linebacker now if we get any kind of spike in there. So essentially, that's the zone combo double teams on the front side, whether it be tight zone or wide zone or inside zone that we like to carry. Now, in your gap schemes, they're a little different. And if we just took a traditional front side double team, let's just say for fun we're doubling the front side guard and tackle on a 3 technique, or a front side tackle and tight end on a 5 technique. Now let's take the lead blocker first, the outside blocker, the play side guard who would be covered. He would be the post blocker. But let's take, for fun right now, the lead blocker. We would talk in terms of a gap step with his inside foot, popping his outside foot. The most important thing we want out of the tackle here is you want your inside shoulder on his outside shoulder. Keith, the gap step is at an angle to frame up the target. The pop step has got to get down. That's the second step. It's the most important step because that's where the force is coming to accelerate the feet. The cleats, they've got to be in the ground on the poppet, the second step. So we're going to hit pad under pad with the top of the shoulder under his pads. You want to hit up and square on your angle to the linebacker. We don't want to sacrifice pressure for position. And you got to coach this guy stay lower longer. And here's the key point. That tackle on that double team, he wants to horizontally collapse the defender inside, and he can forearm shoulder feeding the guard if there's access given to him. And then he blocks the backside linebacker with a hat across the front and get vertical on his backside number, almost as if you're going to U the backside linebacker out, making bubble over your top right there. Now, if the 3 spikes, if the down lineman spikes, now that tackle needs to negotiate himself on a tight track, setting his angle to the backside linebacker. And again, he'd block the backside linebacker with his hat across the front and get vertical on the backside number, unit him out. Okay, now, here's what's real important also. If the guard, the covered guard on the 3 technique, if he's got to close the window, what's the window? Well, the window's the inside A gap right there. If there's a defender in that A gap in there that he's got to close that window with, now that tackle's got to be taught to transition to 2 hands and wash that down technique flat down inside. Now, with the guard, the covered player right here, the post blocker right here, we always have him identify the front for the backside moving part. Okay, so what we do here in Canada is we take a pin step with the inside foot because we have the yard of grace. If we were down south, we would take a gap step. That's just a parallel step. But we can attack the line of scrimmage up here because of where the defender is. So we'll take a pin step with the inside foot, vertical, and then pop the second step. And we tell him this, Keith. This is, I think, an important point. Block the defender with your body, but block the gap with your eyes. You are face guarding the gap. You're always going to close the window, Keith. And the second step, this is important, the second step goes vertical fast. And ask the guy this in a film session. How quick can you get it down going north and south? How fast? Get it down. You want pads under pads of the defender. And we like to think of a forearm shoulder in this blow delivery. We like that. Maintain a high play side knee on that. And then if he strikes and he makes contact, when the contact's made by that forearm shoulder, we like him, Keith, right, advancing his stagger, almost as if he's kind of galloping here. Okay? And he's always got to be ready to accept the 3 technique being fed by the tackle. As I mentioned to you earlier, that tackle's going to try to horizontally collapse that 3 inside. So he's got to be ready for that, and then go to 2 hands to really to tear the guy inside with him. And if there is a second level defender running through the A gap, the guard's got to kind of catapult off and get his head across. If the 3 technique expands outside, Keith, then or a line so wide that there's no contact that made, then you got to coach this guard to do this. He's got to pierce through the A gap, abort the down lineman, and run a tight track back to that backside linebacker with his head across the front on the linebacker, and do the same thing. You that backside linebacker out, make him bubble over you. If the 3 technique does spike, collect it, hat across the front. And then the only other coaching point we give the guy, Keith, is this. If there is an A-gap mug that walks up, you got a gap step. You can't pin step. Gap and pop, okay? And then if there is a run-through, you got to get it right now. Now, this double team I'm explaining right here is a 50-50 double team. This is 50-50, where the guard takes half, the tackle's taking half. I think there are times, Keith, especially in today's world of 2-gappers, that 3 technique on the front side, 2 gaps at guard, where you don't have a chance to get 50-50 on this. And we would call that a 75-25 double team, where now the guard is going to take 75% of the down lineman. That would be a little different. Not so much different for the tackle, but I think you got to approach that a little differently when you do that. So those would be, I would say, the biggest differences between the gap scheme and then the zone scheme, and how we like to coach that right there.
Bringing up a lot of memories for me. We coach those things exactly the way you talked about here, and I know we spent a lot of time at those cool clinics and learning from you and Jim and watching Alex Gibbs stuff. So definitely, I would say, as you talk through everything, the one thing that came through and I think is important in all of these types of blocks is take care of level 1 first. All kinds of detail with the eyes, with the feet, with the hands, but the primary thing, taking care of level 1 before you get to level 2. And I can think, I've seen a lot of teams, and I'm sure part of it is having young linemen who need to learn this. Who leave level 1 too quickly, and then you don't have a good run play. Really get a play going by taking care of level 1.
And there's a reason why for that. You want no penetration. Especially in gap schemes. No penetration, no penetration. Bottom line, no penetration. And in your zone schemes, over the years, statistically, zone schemes, they prevent penetration. And you get average per carry pretty good with zone schemes because there's no penetration.
Exactly. Well, as I said, Coach is jumping around from run to pass here. He wanted to know about the hands. He asked you the last time about the feet. As far as the hands go, do you prefer the independent punch versus the double punch, and how do you teach which you prefer?
There's reasons for both, really reasons for both. And a lot of the reason for that is I think schemes can dictate both, but also the one-on-one block can dictate both. And what I mean by that is the defender's not necessarily always going to give you the ability to punch him with two hands and give you a nice chest to block. He's going to be on the angle at times. He'll be a little, you'll be a little disjointed with where you are right now, and your hands may hit with two hands, but their angles are different. You may have one hand high and the other hand low. You may have both hands high. You may have both hands low. So the defender has a lot to do with where your hands get placed when you're blocking. And then there's times for independent punching when you have to block a guy with one hand because there's no space for the other hand to get in right there. So we teach both. Mm-hmm. And we like to teach a lot of this stuff on the wall in the off season, as I mentioned to you earlier, on the wall.
Yeah.
And we put the bags up on the wall, and that's what we're punching. And we're teaching double punches, double punch high, double punch low, four corners, whole 9 yards, independent combos. So there's reasons for all that stuff.
Coach, what is it you like best of those? Is it being able to have those small targets you're hitting?
I think this about punching. I think here's an important point about punching. Number one, you've got to teach how to carry your hands, and we like to carry our hands away from our body. We like our arms away from our body, not tight to our body. Okay, arms away with a little bend in the elbows. It's almost as if you turn on a boxing match and you watch two boxers box, that's how you want to carry your arms and your hands, mm-hmm. So that your hands are out ready to punch and stab people. As I mentioned to you before, two reasons why block protections fail: you either catch, or you either lean, or you catch. And certainly in punching, you're not catching, you're stabbing. And when you stab, the heel of your hands hit, you want to rotate your elbow inside to get your power to come from your lats. Okay? If the elbows don't turn inward, now more of the power is coming from the tricep muscle. And the tricep muscle is a very small muscle. Very small. Not a lot of power. And when the elbows go out on a punch, a lot of power dissipates. Not that you can't punch somebody like that. You can. But you're not gonna punch him with power. You're not gonna punch him with penetration. And you get those elbows in there, and you get the heel of the hand in there, and you rotate that elbow inside, you'll do a little damn damage. And we always say this about punching: when you put your hands on somebody, you do it for one reason: to do damage. Okay, so I think you gotta really coach. You gotta be physical with your hands, and you gotta coach that. That's coaching, and you gotta coach that to bring that out in players.
The next question really involves a lot of coaching about how do you develop a center who's never played the position before in teaching the snap technique.
Well, in today's world, the shotgun snap is strong and big, and it's about everybody's in a shotgun these days. And one thing we tell them, we say this: adjust your grip on the ball so that you gain more of the fat of the ball. You want to grab the laces with your fingers, but you want to grab more of the ball, more of the fat part of the ball. When we get a young center and we teach him the shotgun snap, we get him in his 2-point stance, but we say this from the get-go: get a visual image of the target, and to do that, just look around your waist. Okay, look around your waist, and from the quarterback waist to his chest is, I would say, Keith, is what we call the strike zone, and that's what he wants to look at. Get a visual image of that, and then address the ball. Okay, and the snap is it's keeping the ball, I would say, as close to the ground as possible during its backward movement. The follow through should rise the ball. But I think it's important that he understands I tell him this: don't be wristy. Shove the ball to the quarterback. It should be it should just float back there to him, and release the ball when it hits your thigh. And it's almost, Keith, like a medium fastball back there. It floats, but it's a medium fastball. Okay? And that's about what we tell them. And the other little thing I share with you is, and I think this is an important point for centers, is we like our center to do this: address the ball, and always move the ball forward about 3 inches. Move it forward 2-3 inches. You can get 4, fine, because especially down south, now you're increasing the distance between you and that defender. You're getting, we never want the ball up underneath our eyes or our forehead. We want that ball out in front of us on our snap, so that it helps us in that distance between us and them right there for a center, especially when he's playing a no-shade defender. So that's about what we tell a young guy when he begins doing that. And like everything else, it takes some skill and takes some work, and generally they get it. But I think don't be risky. Don't be risky with it, and keep that thing locked and bring it back straight.
Our next question is a two-part one. It comes from Tony Testa, who coached running backs for me when I was at Baldwin Wallace, and he is now the head coach at West Virginia Wesleyan, a Division II school. He wanted to know what adjustments, if any, you made to the landmarks and teaching you used in your Cool Clinic presentation. And part two is, what adjustments would you make for American ball?
Well, none of the landmarks. But our footwork and tempo at the snap is a little different for what we talked about before. We're now, Keith, coming off the lock more, off the ball, running more off the ball, and our, because we're able to deal with in two-man combinations, stunts out of two-man combinations. We want people running off the ball. We're a little bit more wide zone now, and we're not utilizing the double under in two-man combinations. We're more of a three-prong double fisted uppercut, as we talked about earlier. Our two-man combinations answer most of the problems we get. However, as I mentioned to you earlier, if we would face, and we did last year against a couple of opponents, if we face movement fronts that are really slippery, really frisky, where they're going two gaps or one gap, and you get multiple people doing stuff, that's when we would consider entertaining a slow down approach. We would be scooting our feet backwards, using double under techniques to slow things down that way. And that's why. And the other answer to your question, honestly, against American defenses, we would not make really any other adjustments. Mm-hmm. I don't see that. It's not necessary from that standpoint.
Alan Estep is the offensive line coach and offensive coordinator at Notre Dame College here in Cleveland, Ohio, a Division II school. He wanted to talk about the best play versus the new odd defense, which is essentially a bear front or 4-eye, 0-4-eye.
Okay. I'd say this. Get in two tight ends. Be two tight ends. Okay, and run a the wider zone, butt of the tight end landmark for the running back, concept play. Okay, and do this against this front with two tight ends. Two plays. Okay, same play for the back, just a adjustment in the blocking systems up front. Number one, the play side tight end. Okay, he would, at the snap of the ball, proceed directly inside to block the first inside spot linebacker with his hat right through the outside armpit of the linebacker. Okay, the play side tackle, he would block the 4-eye technique on his own. Okay, the play side guard, he's going to bucket pull to kick out the end man line of scrimmage. This is kind of a flat parallel pull. Okay, and he would block inside out on this. Okay, the center and the backside guard would what we call a quick A. The center's intent is to win on the linebacker, but guarantee the landmark for the backside guard. The backside guard's intent is to win with his backside shoulder on the down lineman. And then the backside tackle, his intent is to seal the backside B-gap 4-eye technique, and then the backside tight end would turn out on the first defender outside. That scheme right there, we feel strong about. And then the second one would be for the same running back, wide zone type play, 2 tight ends, play side tight end. He would block the outside defender who is outside his alignment right there. It could be a defensive end off the line of scrimmage, could be on the line of scrimmage. He's going to block the first man on or off the line of scrimmage that is outside of his alignment there. Okay, the play side tackle has got the same technique. He is going to block that 4-eye technique just like we did on the previous play. That's his job. Now, the play side guard, he's going to square shoulder shuffle inside to block the nose guard, the 0 technique. And now the center is going to skip pull to block the first spot linebacker. Okay? And now the backside combination is the guard tackle on a combination on the down lineman to the second linebacker. Okay? And the backside tight end would still block his cover down on the backside. Both schemes really have a lot of merit against his defense. It gives them problems that we've had experience with, and for fun, you don't even need to run them both ways. Just run them one way only, and save your reps. And if they give you that front, and that's what I would say here today. I would recommend to you, Keith, on this.
Yeah, some good plans of attack there. Coach also wanted to know how you would arrange your man or slide protection against that front, the 4-eye, 0-4-eye.
Well, if it's let's take 6-man protection, which most people do. We would say this. To the running back, we would assign the running back to the linebacker off the ball, who would be on the second level. Okay, the offensive linemen are going to handle the 4 known rushers and the will linebacker. Okay, so if they're playing this defense with 4 defensive linemen, the linemen are going to count for all 4 down linemen, and they're going to count for the will. If they're playing with 3 down linemen, and you've got an extra linebacker in there, okay, we would still give the running back the inside of the 3 linebackers, and the offensive line would fan both outside linebackers. And in doing so, if there were blitzers to the line's responsibility side, they would most dangerous man block that. And to do this, this fanning scheme that we do here, our center and guards would set off the ball, which we call Mary. They would Mary set off the ball, okay? And our tackles would vertical set straight back on this to fan this, okay? We would never set the center right on the line on this to start with, okay? Unless we felt like the nose guard was a very heavy guy that wasn't real quick, or stout, then we might consider setting him on the line. But we generally set our center off the ball with the guards, and we play this from depth.
And Coach, our last question today comes from Rich Alario, who does a great job up in Vermont, in the Northeast. He's at St. Johnsbury Academy. And his question is, when running a gap scheme with the center blocking back on a 3 technique and a 2-eye on the play side guard, how do you account for the backside inside linebacker run through in that play side A gap?
Okay, that would be, you mean backside A gap?
I'm sorry, yeah, backside
A gap. Okay. First of all, our center technique back there, his job is to block A gap defender. So if that linebacker runs through, he's going to block him. Okay, and then if no linebacker runs through, now he's gonna stab the backside 2 technique, 3 technique right there for the tackle on the backside. He'll collision that thing, in working back that way. But in the event the linebacker runs through, that's his, and we square shoulder shuffle that center. We want him to eat that space up, eat that A gap space up fast, and we square shoulder shuffling back there. Or skip shuffling. We move the play side foot first, and then the backside foot, so we can gain more distance faster back there. But should the linebacker run through, that's all his. And when he blocks that linebacker, he's going to block that linebacker with his hat across the front and make that linebacker bubble over the top.
Coach, I really appreciate you taking the time here. A ton of detail today. I know our listeners are going to really enjoy this, and certainly welcome you back at any time to do this again. I also want to thank all of our guys who sent in questions, and without you, we wouldn't have much to talk about here. But Coach, it was great to meet you here today, and like I said, we could do this again anytime.
Hey, it's my pleasure, and I'm honored and to share our thoughts, and if we've helped some people, that's great, and that's what I believe our industry is all about. Is providing information and helping people, and I'm glad we were able to do it.